Welcome everyone, and just very quickly, I'd like to just give you a bit of housekeeping, bit of background to what we're doing here. As you obviously know, you've all registered. We are running a very quick presentation and really a discussion forum about this topic around recruiting staff and team members into your business. The way Greg and I want to run this is really quite informal. We're going to go through the 7 steps to recruiting right. As Greg will also acknowledge, that it's not rocket science, but they are important steps that a lot of business owners tend to maybe gloss over because everyone's busy. But it is about putting the right effort in and the right structure into this whole effort of recruitment. So we'll be going through a fairly high level points around these 7 steps, but it's really about inviting discussion around these because I think that's where we're going to get the value. I think everyone's had their fair share of challenges with people and recruiting in particular. And the reason why we're doing this is because one of my clients actually asked about this topic, so I thought I'd reach out to Greg and run this. But as we all know, we all want to create a team that is engaged, that is helping us run the business, and ideally that are easy to manage as well. And it's a lot easier to create that team if we can get the first step right, which is the recruitment step. Okay, so that's what this is all about today. So firstly, welcome everyone. I'd like to just acknowledge that I know everyone's busy, so it's great to always see people who can take the time out and learn and engage in these sorts of workshops. So just very quick background to myself for those that don't know me. I know a few people here are Greg's clients or contacts. So I run a business coaching and consulting firm. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years. Even prior to that, I've been working as an accountant in corporate. So a lot of experience analysing business, working with teams, and helping businesses grow. So my current focus is on planning, productivity, team performance, and profit improvement, and mainly work with businesses that are established, growing. They need to put in place the solid foundations for growth, and obviously to be able to scale going forwards, but also improve profitability and greater freedom by making the business run more effectively. Greg, I'll get you to do a quick intro to yourself.
Yep. Thank you, Anil, and good afternoon, everybody again. Similar to Anil, I've got 30 years plus experience in my particular field, which is HR and organisation development, leadership, workplace culture, those sorts of things. Also similar to Anil, I started my business in 2007, so just a couple of years after Anil started his business. So my main business is HR Success, where we provide day-to-day HR support and recruitment support for small to medium-sized businesses. I also have a couple of other business brands, if you like. So one is Success Through People. So you'll see some Success Through People logos as we go through the presentation today and on the checklist at the end. That's really focused more on the leadership, culture, engagement space, so more strategic HR and people management stuff. And we also have another one, Short and Sharp Training, which is largely at this stage disc-related training for SMEs. So that's a little bit about us.
Great, thanks, Greg. So I'm just going to go through the first part of the presentation and cover off the first point out of the 7 steps as well. And then I'll hand over to Greg, and then we'll probably mix it up a little bit as we go through it. So first up, I'll just cover off some of the problems that we see in this area of recruitment in particular. I'm just going to share where recruitment and team fits into my broader business building model, which a lot of my clients that are on here will already be across, but it's always a good refresher just to see the context of this topic within the broader framework. Then we'll cover off these 7 steps. We also will share one of Greg's checklists, which is this 40-point recruitment checklist. And then we'll just open it up to further Q&A. But what I do invite you to do is just to ask questions through your chat if you've got any questions as we go. And after every step in the 7-step process that we'll take you through, we'll invite you to ask questions as well, because we really want this to be fairly interactive as we move through the workshop. Okay, so there, let me know if you've got any questions in the meantime, and we'll be monitoring the chat window as we go. All right, so some common problems first. So firstly, it's where do we start with recruitment? Now, if you are a smaller business and you've never recruited, then obviously you're not sure what to do. But even if you are a more established business and you've done some recruitment, it may not have gone as planned, or you may not be happy with how your team's developing. So even for those that have had some more experience in this area, it's still about, well, where do I start to do it right? Okay, so that's the first thing. Sometimes people just don't know what the process is and how to go about it. Secondly, you may have had a poor response to your recruitment efforts in the past, and that's and so we want to cover off why that might be, and maybe have some discussion around that. And we know that it's probably eased a bit this year, but I know last year and the previous years, after COVID, it has been a very, very tight labour market and very difficult to find the right people. I think Greg probably would agree, and a lot of you, that it's probably eased a little bit more recently, but it is still a war for talent out there. Okay, so it is about trying to find as many of the right people as we can and get them in the room. And thirdly, the other problem is obviously bad hires that don't work out as you expect. And that can really obviously put you off the whole idea of growing your business. And all of this can lead to, obviously frustration for you and also waste of time. Okay, and that's what we want to avoid. So where we want to be is really the flip side of that, is having a plan, knowing the steps to take to achieve the goals that you have of building a team and recruiting right in the first place. Being spoilt for choice, where ideally you'd have a lineup of people waiting to join your business. And also, more importantly, is making sure that they are the right fit as well. And for those that have been through it a bit, you probably can appreciate that it's better to hold off and not just jump at the first person that you think will fit the bill. It's really making sure that they have the cultural fit with your business, and we'll talk a bit about that today as well. And where all of that leads to is obviously team growth, but also more importantly, team harmony. Okay, so what we want to do now is invite you just to share either what you're hoping to get out of today, but also what has been your experience. And these might go hand in hand. You might have had a bad experience and you want to learn how to do it better and learn something out of today, but just want to find out, well, what are the key issues that you face or the key ideas and learnings that you want to get out of today to help you improve how you recruit in future. Okay, so if you just open up your chat window, have a think about that and just enter it in. I'll just give you 30 to 60 seconds to share with us all, and it'll be good to see what pops up, and just to make sure that we cover off some of these throughout this workshop. Okay, so Joe's saying talking the talk, but not walking the walk. I'm assuming obviously that applies to applicants and people joining your business. Gwenda, finding someone for a niche role that will be a good fit for a small team. Okay. Peter, just in general, recruiting better and having the tools to be able to do that. Good. Sean, similar to Gwenda, niche role and small team. Lovey's recently, I know, had a bit of a experience with no applicants from numerous ads that she's been putting out there. Andrea, finding someone with a very specific skill set who is flexible and wants to work in the afternoons. Okay. So it sounds like a few people have quite specific roles, either criteria that they have, whether it's particular industry experience or maybe working hours that they're looking for. And you know, I suppose the more specific it is, and there's obviously going to be less people out there, and which might take a little bit longer. So what else do we have? Cassandra, poor responses. Would love to know some tips on how to manage that. Okay, good. All right, we better move on. Angela, how to navigate your remuneration expectations with no experience. Okay, all right. We can, now if we don't cover these off in the 7 steps, then we might come back to these questions a little bit later and maybe invite you to unmute yourself and we'll discuss those. Okay. All right, so thanks for sharing a few of those. All right, so just very quickly, I just want to share a bit about my business building model. I'm not going to go through it in detail. So I always tell people there are 3 parts to every business, and they're represented by the 3 headings in these 3 columns. The first step is getting the work in the door. The second step is getting the work done productively and effectively. And the last part is getting paid, getting organized, making sure the back office is working well. Now, within this first column, so within each of these 3 columns, I break it down into 3 other areas. So getting the work in the door means getting your strategy right, making sure you've got marketing to generate leads and inquiries, and then or the sales function converts those into customers, and also continues to manage existing customers. Getting the work done is all about getting your delivery processes right, the basics. Then obviously being able to build a team. So if I elaborate on that here, it starts with recruitment. It then obviously the onboarding process, making sure you set expectations. And these are all things that Greg specializes in a lot more than I do. Setting expectations, being able to develop those people, give them the right skills, manage them well, and so on. Okay. Systems is all about making sure that these people have the right tools to follow, processes, even IT or computerized based systems to help automate what they do and streamline your operations. And then lastly, this last third of the process is making sure you know where you're headed with the business, making sure you're clear on your own direction, but then you can share that with others, managing your time well. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, I'm an accountant by training, so numbers are very important, and I spend a lot of time with my clients on looking at their numbers and helping them manage their business through the numbers. Okay, so team fits squarely here in the middle, and that's where this topic fits in today. Okay. So just let us know if you've got any questions there. I've just seen that Guy's also got another point around this topic and how to be open-minded and not let prejudice interfere with the whole recruitment process. All right, so so associated with that model, I have what I call the 7 P's of profit: purpose, planning, pricing, positioning or perception of your business, people, productivity, and procedures. And obviously people is what we're talking about today. Okay. All right, so let's jump into the 7 steps. Okay, so the first one is probably a pre-recruitment step. It's not necessarily part of your, it's not necessarily a step you take when you're ready to hire. It's probably well before that. It's about really presenting your business in a way that is attractive to future team members. Okay. I'll take you through the steps first, and I'm going to share a couple of websites to help illustrate this. And these are things you'll need to do before you start recruiting. It's to really, make sure your brand is known, or that if people see your ad or see information about your business, they're going to look you up. They're going to check out your website. They're going to check out your social media presence and profile. So you need to have had that history of information and presenting in the right way, even before you start the recruitment process. Okay, so here are a few things to think about. First is think like a marketer. Now, a lot of people market their business to prospective customers, but they don't really think about marketing their business to prospective team members. Okay, so you really need to think about marketing your business and selling your business to prospective team members. And a good question to ask yourself is, well, why us? You know, why would someone want to join us as an employee? Okay. And then some very basic points here: have fresh and attractive branding, and also your website, because that's really the key place where people see your business. Update your careers page. Make sure you've got team photos and possibly videos even on your careers page, and also have social media that focuses on your people. Now I'm going to flick over to here, my website, and not my website, but my browser, just to illustrate a couple of examples. So this is a client of mine, Change of Scenery Landscapes. And you can see that, they've got a nice website. It gives you a nice feel about the business. And I know it's a difficult one to convey. There's another landscaping business in the same local area in the Lower Blue Mountains. And you can see that they've tried to do the same thing. They've tried to replicate what my client's done, and it's great. They've got all this content on here, but it just has this intangible sense, I suppose, that it's a bit DIY. Even though the content's there, it's not quite as well presented. And so it's just an example, I suppose, that the content is one thing, but don't underestimate the power of good design. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to convey, but it's when you see a website that does it well, you just get this feeling that it's professional, it's classy, it's a sort of place that you'd want to work. So just I thought I'd just convey or give you an example of both of these, just to show you an example of how maybe investing in a little bit of design and some professionalism can help you just stand out when people are looking at you compared to others. Now, the other thing I'd like to show you, and this is one of Greg's clients, I think, is an example of a careers page where it talks about, it's not just selling, sure, they've got all these services here about what they do for customers, but it's about understanding what they do for team members and why people should join them. And you can see there, it's all about, their values and their purpose, opportunities, flexibility, and then quite a few testimonials, or not testimonials, but words, I suppose, and stories from their team. Greg, this is your client. I'm not sure if you want to say anything more.
Yep. Well, I think that what Anil's highlighting there in terms of the staff testimonials, if you like, are, that's a really good example of positioning the brand from an employment perspective. So we've also got a number of clients, and Anil's and I share one of these clients, where they don't need websites to bring in business. They're very successful businesses. They've probably got more work than they can handle, but what they don't have is good staff. That's really their challenge. Well, they have good staff, but they need more of them.
Yep.
So we've actually managed to work with them to develop their website from an employee marketing perspective, so that their website's not so much about attracting business. It's primarily about attracting new staff. Now, you might not be in a position where you quite need that. You probably need a hybrid version, but the point is that you need to position your business well from an employment perspective, not just from a bringing in more business perspective.
Yeah. And time again, I see that the impediment to growth is not finding more customers, because there's plenty of work out there. Now, I know not everyone is in that situation, but a lot of businesses, there's plenty of work out there, but they're limited to growing because they can't find enough of the right type of people. So it is about reframing your marketing to be focused more on finding people and explaining why they should work for you. Now, the other thing I'd like to share is now I was trying to look for clients that did this well, but I couldn't, I must admit. So I've got clients that, they've got careers pages and things like that, but they're not really focusing enough on their team on social media. So this is a good example of a local business that I know does it well. And sure, on their social media feed, they've got information about their services, which is all great. But they also have, stories about people. There was more that I wanted to share. There were some particular ones that I came across. So this one here, meet the team. Meet Henry. Information about him, fun facts, obviously photo. So they do this regularly. If I keep scrolling through, there's information about the people within their business, things they're doing together, not just their services. And there is another one here of a meet the team that I saw earlier. There's another one, meet the team. So you can see that now what they aren't showing is probably, social functions and other things, just general messing about, maybe not messing about on site, but having fun on site, things like that. So the things you can do to help highlight what it's like to work within a business, and you can do that on social as well. Okay, so that's probably as much as I want to cover off there. But just to remind people that it can start before you actually start recruiting. It's about making sure that there's this background about your business and about the people within your business and what it's like to work in your business. Okay. So the second step is where I'll hand over to Greg. So Greg will focus on the rest of these steps, and I'll interject when necessary, Greg, if that's okay.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you, Anil. And Anil's going to keep an eye on the chat as well for us. So thank you. So just to close off that first one, I think the important message there is that you really just do need to position your business and think about, well, what does it look like from a prospective candidate? Because good prospective candidates, they will look at your socials, they will look at your website. And if it's all a bit tired, if it's a bit bland, if it's sort of just entirely customer focused, then, it may not be appealing enough to them. So you really it is a competitive market. You really need to put your best foot forward as you do with your clients.
And Greg,
okay, so into the second one. So as Anil said, the next step in the process is get ready. So my intention today is really to, as Anil said, there's not a lot of rocket science we're going to be sharing with you today, but what I do want to take you through is what a professional, fully fledged, go the whole bottle process looks like. Because what I often find with SME employers is they're so busy. I know what it's like. I've got a small business myself. You're trying to do 50 things at once. But really, to get the right result in terms of recruitment, you do need to invest time and effort into it. So what I'm taking you through is what a full process looks like, in the hope that you can identify some important steps and tips that you can use to improve recruitment outcomes in your business. So the first thing I'd say is consider your options before recruiting. So again, we're strapped for time. Somebody leaves us and we think, oh, bloody hell, we need somebody else to fill in the chair, get an ad up on Seek and let's see how we go. That's a reality of how it happens in small business quite often. I understand that. But sometimes it can be worth taking a bit of a step back and thinking about, are there other options here? Is this a good time? Can we support that business, that extra position? Is there an opportunity potentially to rearrange, reallocate some duties within the existing team? Is there a team member that's showing great potential for whom this would be an ideal development opportunity? Is outsourcing of some components of that role an option? And is that going to improve the efficiency, the profitability of the business? So I guess the key message is there, before you launch into a recruitment process, take a step back and really think about what are the options. Just because we've had somebody in that chair previously and they've now gone, just turning around and filling that chair with somebody else may not be quite the right solution for your business. So take a breath and just consider the other options. If the option is to, okay, well, yeah, we've thought about all that, but we do need to move forward, we need to fill the chair, then make sure that you've got a good job description together. Now, I know I'm a HR person, I'm a bit biased, and all these things are very boring, but job descriptions are pretty important. They're important in recruitment, they're important for performance management and all sorts of things. So I know they're boring, but please put together a good job description. We've got templates we can give you to get you started on all that. Now, what that does is that in the process of developing a job description or updating a job description gives you the opportunity to think through, well, what is it that we really need from this person? And secondly, what does that person look like? What skills, attributes do they have? What experience do they have? And it allows you to get that all on paper before the recruitment process begins. So I think one of the participants, Guy, I think you said, I need to be open-minded and not let prejudice get in the way. So that bias thing is a thing. So one of the ways that you can counter that is by being clear about what you need before you start the process, so that when you get candidates coming in, you're not dazzled by the shiny shoes or whatever it might be. You're really coming back to that document that grounds you in terms of what it is you need this person to do and what skills, personal attributes and experience you need that person to have. So job description is really important. I also encourage you to do a bit of research around market salaries and competitor offers. Now, you can go on Seek, you can just browse. So if you're recruiting an estimator, for example, as one of our clients was the other day, you can go on and browse in Sydney for estimated jobs. Now, it's true, a lot of them won't share their remuneration information, but sometimes you can glean that. You can also get a sense of how they're positioning the job, and what they're putting forward as their their what they call it, USPs or something like that. So how are they positioning their business in the market, and what can you learn from that, and how do you need to position your business? So that's an important aspect. You need to make a decision about whether you're going to recruit yourself and use an agency or a consultant. We do it. I'd love to have a chat with you, of course, but that's not the right option for everybody. If you've got the time and you feel like you've got the capability within your business to run an effective process, I'd encourage you to give it a go by all means. But if you're strapped for time and you're not sure that you can quite run the process as it should be run to get the right outcome, then you may need to look at other options. If you are managing it internally, think about your selection team. I'm a firm believer that none of us see everything. So just having somebody else in the room, particularly when you get to the interview stage, something like that, I think that's really important to have get another opinion from someone within your team, because they may pick up on things that you don't quite pick up on. So think about who's going to be involved in the selection process. And then decide on the recruitment process. Map it out. So when you're working with clients, I'm sure most of you do a great job. You've got a new project on board, you've got a new client, you map out, you schedule things, you start to think about, well, okay, what's the first step? What's the second step? What's the third step? Who's going to do it? When are we going to do it? It's the same with the recruitment process. You need to be organised.
No, that's great, Greg. Any questions there from anyone before we move on? Happy to either for someone, any of you want to unmute yourself and ask questions about this, or just put it into your chat. Either way. But I think Greg's right. This is the pre-advertising step about just planning it and thinking about it, which, as Greg said, a lot of people don't do because they are rushed for time and we're wearing lots of different hats. It's just making sure we put the a little bit of effort in. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it is about thinking things through. All right, Greg, I might move on
Yep.
to the advertise stage, which everyone's jumps into.
Okay, so it is about advertising, but more broadly than that, it's about sourcing candidates. So it's not always about advertising, that's usually part of it, but there's other ways that we can source candidates. So one of the things that I find again with SMEs pretty often is that there's an automatic assumption, okay, well, we'll stick it on Seek and see how we go. There's many other ways and means that you can source good candidates. So really think through what the options are and what your strategy is going to be. So Seek is a paid job board. There's plenty of free job boards that are available. Adzuna, Jora, for example, free job boards, Indeed, LinkedIn, you can lodge, you can promote a job for free. So think about all the different options beyond Seek. Seek is the big one, of course, but you can get lucky with some of those others. Social media is a really important mechanism depending on the depending on the nature of the role that you're looking to recruit for. So I find social media can be particularly beneficial for local jobs at a lower level. So, and I don't just mean putting it on your company Facebook page, although that can be useful. But it's also about thinking about there's a number of job-related Facebook groups, for example. So there's Penrith and Western Sydney Jobs, I think. There's about 3 of them locally that we often post on. Chamber of Commerce, if you're a member of that, you can post jobs. So it's really about thinking through those different opportunities to get the word out there. Again, I go back to a comment Anil made about thinking like a marketer. So if you're in marketing mode, you're thinking about, okay, who are our clients and where do they hang out? And how do we start to engage with them? It's exactly the same process, but you're thinking about, okay, who are our good candidates? Where do they hang out? And how do we get our opportunity in front of them? You've still got print media. We don't do a lot of that these days, but there are certain circumstances in which we would put ads in local papers and those sorts of things. Things like signage, if you're running a retail business, stick a sign in the front door. If you've got a trades business, I've seen trades vehicles running around with, we're seeking new electricians or something. Promote it that way. Employee referrals. So we sometimes help our clients come up with employee referral programs whereby they tell their friends about opportunities, and that there's a bit of a payment or movie tickets or whatever it might be that come their way if they're engage them in the sourcing exercise. Internal candidates, don't forget to look inwardly for talent. And there's also active search. So you can get access to the back end of Seek where you can find what appear to be good candidates and tap them on the shoulder. So you don't necessarily need to wait passively for them and hope that they apply. You can use some of those mechanisms to actually reach out to potential candidates. So think creatively about how you're going to get your opportunity out there and how you're going to try and engage with suitable candidates. It's not just stick an ad on Seek and see how we go. So whatever you do in regards to sourcing candidates, you do need to put a decent advertisement together. So again, think creatively. If you're an electrician, hopefully you're not putting an ad there that just says, well, we fix your PowerPoints, call us now. You try and get a bit more creative, a bit more imaginative. You try and set your business apart from competitors. It's exactly the same with recruitment advertising. Think about doing something a bit different that makes you stand out in a difficult market. Ensure a professional process. So we sometimes find that it breaks down at this point as well. So value your candidates, even if they're not the right candidates. Treat them respectfully and honour the fact that they're interested in your business. So, you know, I know we make a point of responding to all our candidates. Every candidate that applies gets a response as soon as they lodge their application, and they also get something at the end, even if they don't get the job. If they ring about the job and they want to make an inquiry, look, can you send me a job description, or I'm keen to understand how much it pays, or something like that. Make sure that the person that's handling those responses presents a good image of your business. I've had candidates, I've had friends that have been in highly sought after jobs. They've been offered jobs and they've rejected them on the basis that the recruitment process was such a farce. They thought, well, if they can't manage that, what on earth would it be like to work with them? So they've rejected jobs on the basis of a non-professional recruitment process. So, you know, you need to think about how you manage those inquiries.
Greg, I'm just conscious of time
Yep.
as well. We've got less than 5 minutes per slide for the rest
Yep.
of it. So
Yep, that's fine.
just
Leave that one.
I'm
Yep.
just
The last
curious.
one was just making sure you've got the time to run the process. But
Yeah,
yep.
which I know people sometimes, you know, they advertise and they get applicants and then they don't have time to spend on reviewing the applicants, and then they take too long to actually then get back to the applicants. And I think that can really affect the effectiveness of any recruitment.
Yep.
Just quickly, just love to hear if anyone has had success with any of these non-advertising type of approaches, whether it's employee referrals, active search, signage. You know, just curious. We might move on, but if you want to share in your chat if you've had any success with anything other than advertising, that would be useful to know as well.
Okay, so next one, Anil.
Yep.
Okay, so pre-interview selection. So you've got a bunch of candidates that you need to consider. So one of the ways in which you can streamline that process is to use questionnaires or some sort of surveys. So sometimes in Seek, for example, you can add questions so that, you know, how many years experience do you have in, you know, domestic electrical work or whatever it might be? You know, do you have a trade certificate? Do you have a driver's license? So you can do those things to try and streamline the screening process. Another thing that we're seeing and using a bit more of is use of videos. So there is software out there. I get the word wrong, but I think it's asynchronous or something like that, interview software, whereby you send somebody a link, you ask them a few questions, and then they respond on video when they are able to do so. So it's not a live thing. You're just asking them to record their responses to several questions. That can be really useful in terms of the screening process, because it gives you a look at the person and you can start to see their manner and how they communicate, their presentation, obviously. So there's a few things you can do to streamline that. Another thing which goes back to the job description really is being very clear about your selection criteria. So if you've done that work up front in terms of a job description, you will then have a clear set of criteria by which you can assess candidates that come in. So, you know, you've said up front, well, we really need somebody with at least 5 years experience. Well, do they have it or don't they have it? And then, you know, we need them to be able to, well, we need them to have a forklift license. Do they have a forklift license? Yes or no? So if you've done that work up front, then it can pay dividends when you're screening candidates. You then need to identify those that you're going to move forward with. So usually we'd recommend, if you're getting some good candidates, interviewing 2 to 5 is usually a sort of rule of thumb, because it gives you a good sort of comparison, which can be useful. And then we never put candidates in front of clients unless we've done at least a phone, but more typically an online interview with them, Last thing you want is somebody turning up for an interview. You're investing time, they're investing their time, and as soon as they walk in, you know it's not going to work. So you might as well clear that out the way by doing an initial screening interview, which might usually only be 15, 20 minutes. If that goes well, get them in for a full interview.
And Greg, that last point is important, even if they're doing it themselves, not
Yes, yeah,
outsourcing it to an agency or a consultant. Yeah.
absolutely. Because there's a big investment in your time in getting people in for interviews. Yeah.
Now, I'd like to just reach out to Angela. I know Angela's done something recently around this screening questionnaire. As part of some of the group coaching calls that we've had with some of my clients, we've talked about having a screening questionnaire, introducing a screening questionnaire as part of the process. And I know Angela did that not just for the initial application, but after the applications came through to help shortlist to the next stage before having the phone interviews or the phone screening. There was another questionnaire you sent out, Angela, and just wanted to just get your whole perspective, I suppose, of introducing a questionnaire into the process and how that's helped.
I think that added a lot of value to my process. Just from seeing, I think we just said somewhere before around the personal qualities of someone, not necessarily when you know you're not going to get a lot of candidates with the technical skills, but you want to understand where that person's coming from for that longer term employment.
And their values, values fit, that type of thing. Yeah. And
it also identified candidates that weren't prepared to answer that questionnaire. Probably I didn't spend any more time on them either.
Yeah.
To save time.
And you've just done that process. You've just recruited a couple of people. I think one worked out of the two, but you wanted to be quite selective and use that process to make sure that you save time, plus also made sure you got the right person on board. Yeah. So I think definitely it's something that I'd really encourage people to look at, is some sort of a screening questionnaire. I think in Angela's case, it was the first time I've seen, when I saw her set of questions, it was really very values based, to try to assess that person, the way the person thinks, and whether they'll be a fit for the business. So yeah, that was good. It was a good example.
I think also, just quickly, it was also assessing that we were the right employer for them. I think that was really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good. Now, guys, thanks, Angela. Guys asked a question: what's the trick to getting applicants to show their true colours in an initial screening interview? They're always on their best behaviour, well dressed. So the screening interview is generally not done face to face, Guy. It's more just a chat over the phone to just to get a feel for someone, make sure that there's a bit about their background, what their expectations are, and it does help to qualify or to screen out some people. The next step with the interview will be it'll be good to get Greg's thoughts about how to get the really understand their true whether it's experience or behavior and true fit. We can cover that off in the next one, Greg.
Yeah.
Now, there were a couple of people who shared from the previous slide. Cassandra, you've said you've had some success offering employees a reward if their referral has been successful. Do you want to, if you can unmute yourself, just share a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. We offer a remuneration, so $500 if someone does suggest a candidate, and then if they're successful, we'll give them half that amount now straight away on the initial startup, and then obviously the remainder of that at the probation period ending.
Great. Now, I've seen that happen before, whether it's even up to $1,000 I've seen. So it's cheaper than advertising and going through that whole process sometimes. So so well done. Can I ask what sort of industry, Cassandra?
Multi-trades business, so electrical, plumbing, civil, fire.
Great. Thanks for sharing. And someone else, I think that's probably about it. All right, good. Thanks for that. Greg, I'll let you continue.
Okay. Okay, so we're up to the interview stage now. So this is formal, generally in person, but not always. Interviews. Decide on the number of interviews and format. As I said, 3 to 5 is usually a good measure if you're getting that number of decent candidates. Group interviews can work for some roles. So Anil, I know you've had some experience with that. Did you want to mention that?
Yeah, probably don't need to go into too much detail, but obviously it depends on, it's a bit like the qualification, the pre-screening. You need to work out how many applicants you think you're going to get and how tightly you want to screen and qualify. But if you do have a role, maybe an admin type role, or roles that you're going to get a lot of applicants. So I've worked with some disability service providers. They're obviously recruiting regularly, and some of them will bring their applicants in for a interview all at once. So they've done the screening beforehand, they bring them in. It's a way that they can share a bit about the business, where the business is heading. So a bit about that purpose and vision for the business. You can invite questions from the group. And importantly, you can see how others are interacting and listening when others are speaking, when some of their other applicants are speaking. So it's a good way to just judge a bit of the dynamics. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. Obviously, you need to have the right numbers, but it can work well, but it does take quite a bit of planning.
Yeah. Okay, so that can work well in certain situations. So when you also get to interviews, I believe it's a good strategy to have consistent questions. You want to make it conversational, and it's very much a two-way thing. But by the same token, consistency is useful because you want to be able to compare apples with apples. If you're just rambling off into all sorts of directions and you're making a connection with somebody about the footy finals or whatever it is, well, that's great. But at the end of the day, it's really about assessing their skills, experience, and personal attributes and how that's going to deliver value to your business. So consistency in terms of the interview process is important. I think also looking at other options, and this goes to Guy's comment a bit, in terms of, well, what are other things you can do? So yes, you're receiving applications, you're looking at their applications, you're perhaps doing some sort of screening process, you're doing an interview. What about things like psychometric assessments or skills testing? Get them in. Like I had many years ago, we were recruiting for a mailroom job, and they actually gave somebody a bunch of dummy envelopes and said, stick them in the right pigeonholes, which all seemed a bit ridiculous. But when I asked them, this was many years ago, when I asked them afterwards, they said they had previously recruited somebody to the mailroom that was dyslexic and just couldn't read so they were just randomly sticking them in. So think about what can you do to further assess that person's skills. Again, second interviews is another option. I'm a big fan of second interviews for any position. So what I often suggest is you get all the formal stuff done in the screening process and the formal interview, but before you make them an offer, get them in, show them around the site, just have a general chat with them, talk with them about the footy or whatever it might be. And through that, you're getting perhaps a bit behind the facade, if you like, and you're trying to establish a bit more about the person's true character. So I'm a big believer in, I've called them second interviews, but it's really a meet and greet and have a bit of a chat.
And Greg, they're just referring back to Guy's question.
Yeah.
He said, what's the trick to getting applicants to show their true colours in an interview? They're always on their best behaviour, well-dressed, polite. Then they potentially become disrespectful once they're in the job. And obviously it depends on different roles, but it could be either, whether it's a trades-based role or an office role, it can, the same thing can happen.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bit about what I was just saying there, which is about trying to find multiple ways in which you can gather information about this candidate. So I actually see recruitment very much like a jigsaw puzzle. So if you've got a 10-piece jigsaw puzzle, but you're only holding 2 of the pieces, it's going to be very difficult for you to get a sense of what the full picture is. So the more things you can do, be it psychometric skills testing, interviews, referee checks, second interviews, all of those things represent a piece of the puzzle. So the more pieces you've got, the more complete the picture will be and the better chance you've got of success.
And once again, Greg, I know this probably all sounds to a lot of people like a lot of work, but it needs to be to make sure you, well, you need to put the requisite amount of effort in. Otherwise, it just invites problems down the track.
Yeah. Well, it's an investment. For most of us, staff-related costs are the single biggest expense in a business. So, you know, you want to make sure you invest that money wisely to get the right outcome.
And the biggest frustration as well in a business potentially. So it's best to, yeah, as you said, invest in it up front.
Okay. So I'm just conscious of time, so just whiz through these next ones. And obviously I'm available, as I'm sure Anil's available for chat over the next week or so, or whenever, if you need more details. So post-interview, okay, you've got hopefully a good candidate or a couple of good candidates to choose from. Check your references. I know I hear it every day. People say, well, people aren't going to say anything bad, so I won't bother doing referee checks. Well, I can tell you they do tell you occasionally the bad things, or they go silent when you ask them a difficult question, such as, would you re-employ this person? Would you be happy to have this person on your team again? And silence can tell you everything. So do your due diligence. Make sure you check people's referees. Also check their qualifications, work tickets, etc., if that's a critical part of the job. We have had experience in the past where people have photocopied their friend's trade certificate, and they've been caught out. So we like to think people do the right thing, but they don't always. So check those things if it's important for your business. Then you've got other checks potentially that might need to be done. As much as you, insofar as possible, do those as part of, make those contingent upon those checks being satisfactory before you give them the offer and finalise it and that sort of thing. Obviously, make sure you give them a letter of offer, employment contract, make sure that you're compliant in terms of any awards, pay rates, all that sort of stuff. And I also make it a practice of advising unsuccessful job applicants. It's just good PR. You may have another vacancy in 2 months. If you've got a good candidate that doesn't feel that they've been valued through the process, they're not going to come back again. So just, you know, be respectful and mindful of how you manage your job applicants. We always make it a practice for anybody that gets to an interview, we will actually ring them personally and thank them for their application, tell them that they're not successful and give them a bit of feedback. You know, we just think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Can I ask just the audience, that first point about references, you talked about asking the right questions, Greg, and that also applies to the actual interview. Do people here have a list of questions that they ask, or are they looking for better questions? I'm just interested because that obviously can, you know, the types of questions you ask can really help you better understand not just the person's background, but also how they think, the potential behaviors, how they interact with other people. So I'm just curious if people can just share in their chat whether they have a good set of questions that they're happy with, or whether they would like to maybe get a set of recommended questions. Now, Joe's asked, while you're doing that, Joe's also asked a question here, interested in pre-employment health check, assuming this would be a GP check, or is there other avenues to check on history? Greg, that one's probably one for you.
Yep, it would usually be a GP or a occupational therapist or something like that, depending on the nature of the job. So there's, well, I'm in Western Sydney, there's a few local firms that we sometimes refer people to. So particularly if the job's physically demanding, that can be useful. Another way you can do it is just put something on the job application or in the contract saying that they need to advise you if they have any impediments that may prevent them doing particular aspects of the work. And yeah, so you can ask them for that information. You can't deny somebody an opportunity because they've had a workers' comp claim, for example, in the past. But you can deny them the opportunity if they have a physical or psychological restriction that limits their ability to do the job. But you can't make assumptions. That needs to be a medical, a medical diagnosis, if you like.
Yeah. So Gwenda's just said that they don't have any set questions. It'd be good to get some. I've got some. I'm sure Greg's got some. We can probably share some standard types of questions that you could use. So we might do that after the workshop.
Yeah.
Tracy's saying, I have a selection of questions I use. I don't use all of them. A couple of questions I often ask are, what do you think employers are looking for? Yeah, good. And secondly, what's the difference between a good insert name of role and a great name of role? I don't quite understand that one.
Yeah, I know. I like that one.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Well, another one that I like is
like a good tradesperson and a great tradesperson. Okay, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, so they can help define what makes a person great. Yep, great, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, good.
Okay, great. All right, so we're moving on to the onboarding process now. So you've basically got your ideal candidate. Hopefully, you've made them the offer. Everybody's excited. You now need to get them on board. So again, there's work involved in this, but it's about an investment for the future. So make sure that you're prepared for the first day. There's nothing worse than somebody turning up and saying, well, I'm here to start, and then say, who are you? And oh my God, no, boss isn't here today, etc. So first impressions count. Make sure that you've got the admin stuff sorted. If they need access to technology or email address and all that, as much as you can have that set up prior to them commencing. Introduce them to key people, obviously, make it a warm welcome. You want it to work out. They want it to work out. You've got to put some effort into making that happen. Set expectations is really important. I would actually suggest sitting down with somebody, working through their contract, making sure that they understand it. They've probably accepted it by then, but just make sure that the key attributes around, key elements around work hours and all those sorts of things are clear. Run through the position description, talk about the organisation's values if you have them, which I encourage. Introduce them to policies and procedures. So really just spend some time over the first week making sure that they really understand not just what you want them to do, but how you want them to do it. What are the expectations upon which they're going to be assessed during the probation period? And so with expectations comes accountability. So make sure that you're scheduling catch-ups. So you might do a couple of informal check-ins over the first couple of weeks. How are things going? What are you finding challenging? What are you enjoying, etc.? Any problems, any suggestions, that sort of stuff. And then schedule some more formal reviews at 1, 3, and 5 months, assuming you've got a 6-month probation period. So if you've set expectations well and you build that level of accountability in the first 6 months, then you're well on your way to success. Sometimes, unfortunately, we find people just get too busy and they just throw somebody into the fire and hope that it works out. You've gone through all that effort to recruit the right person. Be sure to continue to put that effort in and set them up for success.
Very good. So they're the seven steps. So any questions so far, just pop it into your chat for now. Now there is also, Greg has a fantastic checklist, and as you can see, it's one of his success through people checklists. It is, I think, maybe 3 or 4 page checklist that takes you through more detail around all of these steps. So if you do want a copy, then you can just scan that QR code. and I will send a copy out anyway, but scan the QR code if you want to grab that. Plus also, Greg, they'll get access to a whole heap of information that you send out regularly, HR updates, other tips and tricks around people management, Greg.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I'll leave that up for a tick. Feel free to just do that. Yeah, just open it up to general Q&A. Happy for you to just unmute yourself and ask away around anything that we've covered. And I know we've gone a little bit over time, but happy to stay on board and just answer any questions or just have a general discussion.
Just one thing, Anil.
Yes, Wayne.
Just sort of in the context of the earlier comment around being unbiased, I just wondered what maybe the group's thoughts are on what I sort of term as job hoppers. So their resume, shows a pattern, a few months here, maybe a year here, etc., and maybe how people view that.
Yeah, I know from experience, I've got clients who just automatically discount. Well, are wary, I should say, of that. But happy to ask the others. Feel free. Anyone wants to unmute and respond to Wayne's question there. Or just share in your chat what your thoughts are in general. Now, is it something, I suppose the question we can ask is it something that rings alarm bells or red flags when you see a resume that has someone who has only been in roles for, let's say less than 12 months at a time? Well, probably even less than 2 years at a time. Thanks, Joe.
I'll jump in for the
Greg.
So I think, Wayne, it is a concern to many of us, and it's certainly something that we look at in terms of client candidate applications, I should say. I'm always a believer in being honest and transparent. So just if they are otherwise a good candidate, ask them. I can't help but notice in the last 5 years you've had 6 jobs. So we're really looking for somebody that is going to invest in the long term in our business. And, so I'm keen to understand a bit more about what's happened there and just give them the opportunity to explain. It could be that they've had, relationship breakdowns, relocations, deaths in the family, those sorts of things happen. So, I think at least giving them the opportunity to explain that is valid. I mean, they might make up some crap, frankly, but, you've got to exercise your judgment on that. But I guess at least asking them is, I think, important. The other thing I would say in response to that is, again, that's where referees can come in handy. Okay, they worked with you for 6 months or 12 months. Why did they move on? Or what's your understanding as to why they moved on? So just gathering information.
Does that help, Wayne? I know Andrea and Angela have also shared their concerns about job hoppers. So it's definitely something that I think most people are wary of.
Great. Thanks very much.
Can I ask, Wayne, do you have someone in particular? Are you recruiting at the moment? Is it something live that you're looking at, or is it just a general question?
No, we are. And we had that exact scenario. So somebody that last week, it's for a trades assistant role, but somebody who ticked all the boxes and had been with a number of fire companies, but in short bursts. And it's just something I've always been wary of. I mean, the end result was coming back to what Greg mentioned there, that there was one particular company who it comes back to a network thing where I know somebody there. I called them, and the suggestion was probably not a good idea to hire them. So,
okay. All right. Good. Thanks, Wayne. Any other questions? And while you're thinking about that, I'd also like to invite you just to write into your chat any main, what are the key 1, 2, or 3 takeaways from today, and anything that you'd like to action in your business as well. So if I can invite everyone to just think about that and share that in your chat, but also at the same time, if there's any other questions about what we've covered, then happy to take those as well. And you can just unmute yourself and ask a question if you have to.
I've got a question, Greg. Just wondering, for different sized businesses, say one-man operations or slightly bigger businesses, at what point would you say using your services for recruitment is worth it, or in terms of the cost and the reward?
Yeah. Well, look, I'd say, I mean, there are people that have the time and the capability and the internal resources to manage an effective recruitment process. So if you're in that position, I say go for your life. If you are nervous about it, you've had poor experiences, or you just don't have the time, then canvass other options. I mean, our recruitment process is a bit different. We're not a fully fledged recruitment consultancy. It is a significant part of our business, but we work on a different model, which I'd be happy to share with you, but is designed to be a bit more cost effective. But anyway, that just sounds like promo. But if you
Oh no, I think it's interesting, Greg. I know that Angela, I know Guy, you know Angela as well. Angela and I talked about this recently. Angela's used recruitment consultants in the past, the fully fledged, full fee, I should say. Consultants, which charge you, roughly 15% of the package of a new employee. Now Greg's, very different to that, and there are other HR consultants that also provide more of a support role. It could be either full-on recruitment and take that whole burden off you, or it could be helping you with bits of parts of the recruitment process. Is that fair to say, Greg? So it could be helping you put a job description together, or at least reviewing what you've put together, maybe an ad, understanding how to ask questions, how to go about certain steps in the process. So there's, I suppose it's a more flexible approach with you, Greg.
Yes, and others, as you said. So there's there's different ways of doing things. I mean, we're very transparent about things, so it's all on our pricing and our methodologies on the HR Success website, Guy, if you wanted to take a look and of course reach out. But there's others out there that do similar to what we do, and we're happy to support those that want to give it a go themselves. And the checklist presents a full step-by-step process really to help you manage it internally if you do have the time to do that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Greg. I appreciate that. I think what I was thinking is, I'm conscious. I sometimes think I don't have the time, but I assume I don't have the money. And so I have a go. And then I have costs such as my time, and then finding someone else, and then fixing mistakes. And so I'd love to see a summary of because in my mind, I'd imagine that coming from your perspective, it's like it would probably be, why would you you'd probably, would you say the benefits generally outweigh the risks? It's worth paying the money because you can just waste so much time and money and effort recruiting the wrong people. Yeah.
Well, look, you wouldn't expect me to say anything other than that, would you? But yeah, I mean, we've got clients. I know Cassandra's on the call. She manages recruitment internally for her business and does it very well. But they're a more substantial business guy. So if you've got that time, that's fine. Go for it. If you need a bit of help, that's what we're here for.
Sounds like maybe an opportunity for someone to rate themselves across a whole range of recruitment skills or time and whatever else it might be, and just to help them assess whether or not they've got the capacity to do it themselves, or whether they need some help, and maybe something on the track we can discuss. Thanks, Guy. And anyone else have any questions? I'm just, while we're waiting for other questions, I'll just read out some of the things that people have shared about takeouts. Checking references is important, presenting your business, having a careers page, first impression, business, social media, website, all of those sorts of things. Scheduling catch up with new employees, week 1, week 2, 1 month, 3 months, and so on. So that's an important takeaway. And so on. So yeah, no, happy to field any other questions in the meantime. Otherwise, if you have to head off, then obviously feel free. I know we've gone over a little bit, but happy to just stay on and have more discussion around this for another 5 minutes if you're okay with that, Greg.
Yep, sure. I'm just looking at somebody's comment. I'm not quite sure who it is, but support. They say their takeaways to schedule catch-ups with new employees, as I suggested. So that is really important, because the vast majority, I read a stat once, it was like 50% of turnover, which is quite considerable in SMEs.
Staff turnover.
50% of it incurs within the first 12 months of employment. So if you can get in early and build that relationship, build the expectations, and make people aware that they're going to be held accountable for their performance early on in their tenure or their work with you, is the prime time to do it.
And on the flip side, also asking them, there may be things that you're not providing, tools, support, other training that they feel that it would be useful for them to do their role properly. So it's having that right, creating that right relationship and atmosphere to have those conversations, Greg.
Yes, that's right. Well, very much a two-way thing. So new people coming into your business are can be really valuable in terms of identifying opportunities for improvement, because we're so immersed in our own businesses, we sometimes don't see the obvious.
All right.
Gotta go. Thank you so much, guys.
Wrap
Appreciate
it up
it.
there. Thanks, Cassandra. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We probably need to wrap it up there, but thank you also, Greg. I'll be sharing Greg's details, that checklist, and really appreciate your expertise on this one, Greg.
Yep. Thanks, Anil, as always, and thank you, everybody. Nice to chat with you.